Welcome back. Well, once again, important numbers coming through today about the number of people who don't have jobs in our country. The figures from Statistics South Africa, as you've seen through the day, show this is the second quarter in which we've increased the number of jobs and decreased the number of people who are jobless. But we still, depending on which number you look at, have at least 8 million people without jobs. The people that this hurts are young people. But we also see promises all the time from politicians, from other leaders, that they'll deal with unemployment and create jobs. There are many different views on this. You'll hear from the Free Market Foundation in a while. But first, Sia Mama is the coordinator of the Assembly of the Unemployed. Sia, good afternoon to you. We keep hearing from Statistics South Africa that jobs are being created. That's been the story of the last few months. Are you noticing any difference among your members in the communities that you work in?
So, Stephen, no. And we've been raising this through our call as well for a basic income grant in what needs to happen and the sort of investment that we need to talk about when we need to talk about jobs. And the jobs really that we have been seeing being created are jobs that are highly precarious and casualized that would last at about 3 months to 6 months contracts. And you cannot really call that sustainable employment. And, I mean, the situation is now desperate. The working class is increasingly depressed. I mean, we've seen in the Eastern Cape just recently 2 women who had to kill themselves and with their children because they're suffering from poverty. And we've seen statistics in particularly Gqeberha where over 10 children have died because of acute malnutrition. So this says a lot. But what we're seeing as a response from government is budget cuts and prioritizing of servicing debts. And this becomes the results of austerity that we're seeing currently. And, yeah.
I mean, there's so much to it, Sia, I'm aware of that. Politicians say they have a plan to increase jobs. I don't know how to put this politely. Do you believe any of the politicians when they say that?
Well, I mean, look, Stephen, the budget, this recent budget policy statement by the Minister of Finance said a lot. And also, prior to the budget statement, what we've also seen is government issuing notices for the public service to stop employment, to start employment freeze. And look, and who is depending on these services? And what results does that have in terms of employment? But at the same time, the people who are employed, if we're talking about the expanded definition of employment now, it's over 8 million. And those people are dependent on the services that the government is putting cuts to. At the same time, the prioritization of debts and how financialized our economy is also says a lot about this. And in the Assembly of the Unemployed, we have been saying that, look, we need investment. And the investment that we need is investments that speaks to reindustrialization, because that's where we could tap into sustainable jobs. We need houses. People need to build houses, employ people to build houses. We need infrastructure, we need roads, employ people to build roads. And that's what we're talking about.
So, Sarah, I mean, what would you do? I mean, I accept a basic income grant would alleviate some of the situation, but to actually create jobs and look, I mean, everyone has a different view of life, but I think many people, perhaps most people, would prefer to work for their own income or to have both if necessary. So what would you do? Investment in infrastructure, every economist on the left and the right would agree with you. Employing people through a bigger expanded public works program, okay. Anything else that you would change? Anything else that you would do that could work?
Look, Stephen, what we saying is that people are looking for work. They are not finding work. People are looking for jobs. They are not finding jobs. And this is because of the nature of our economy and the financialization of our economy, right? I mean, so look at how the number of discouraged employment seekers, what's happening to them? There's no jobs. And what do you do in that situation? Because people are at the same time dying of acute malnutrition. Children are hospitalized because of acute malnutrition. What do you do in that situation? So this is a serious call for a basic income grant. While at the same time, we're saying to government, there are alternatives. You can invest, real investment, not financialized investment that would go into the financial sector, but investment that would go to productive industries through reindustrialization, and that would create jobs, and the jobs, sustainable jobs that we need.
You're in Joburg now, Sierra. I understand that you spend most of your time in Quebec. You'll see the same problems. Infrastructure, electricity not working, water not working, roads that are just falling apart. I don't know which is worse at the moment, I'm afraid. So, I mean, that obviously makes it impossible to start a small business. And that's where the infrastructure investment would go, right? I mean, that's where we would put people to work.
But then what is that met with, Stephen? So this is also met with another, I mean, we're actually in a serious class war if you look at this, because one, municipalities are operating, if you look at the municipal finance model, municipalities are operating in a way that they need to generate their own income. And through the generation of their own income, it's the people who pay for services who would get these services. Now, and what does this say against bylaws? What does this mean in relation to bylaws and the people who make these businesses? It's another issue. And look, and this is a situation that we are also faced with. Now, government would then send into municipalities through this grant for infrastructure. But that grant for infrastructure is also met with something else. It's met with the cuts that also come with to municipalities. And yeah, we face a serious, broader political crisis, and the crisis that it's the working class who has to face the brunt of these problems.
So you spoke of class war. We'll speak to your, I don't know, friends, colleagues at the Free Market Foundation in a few moments. They're sort of on the right. I don't want to speak for them. They're more than capable of speaking for themselves. But I suspect when I ask them the question I asked you, what would you do to get the economy going, they're probably going to say things like reduce the number of labour laws, remove some labour protections. They're probably likely to say that we should stop implementing things like affirmative action. What do you believe the consequences of that kind of, I suppose, rightward policy would bring?
Look, and I think one thing that we need to really speak about, and I think you're raising very important points that they would mean, of course, that would be their argument. But in some way, through austerity, that's happening, right? I mean, we're seeing the budget that's going to the CCMA and how the protection of workers' rights happening there. And this is also the same issue of budget cuts. We're seeing what's happening in the bargaining chambers, right? But then how do we counter that is how I would respond to this question. So how do we counter that? And how do we counter that is we need to talk about how do we not revolt, but how do we solve our tax system? We need to talk about how do we reform our tax system, because that's where the problem lies. So we need to be introducing a progressive wealth tax. Because, and I mean, there's also studies around how if you could tax about 3 to 7% of the rich, I mean, you could gain from that huge billions of rand that could go into the fiscus. And this would counter many of these things that are encountered by austerity. Illicit financial flows, profit shifting. I mean, there's like huge studies now that a year we're losing over 100 billion to profit shifting. So we need to stop corruption. We need to start taxing the rich. We need to introduce a stricter wealth tax like we've seen it in the 1940s. And this is how we could deal with many of these problems, including funding a basic income grant for precarious workers and the unemployed. And these are the points that we're making.
Siyamama, I'd stay tuned if I were you, the Free Market Foundation. They'll speak for themselves in just a moment. Thank you very much indeed. Siyamama is a coordinator at the Assembly of the Unemployed. Well.